You know those picture-perfect suburbs where every lawn looks like it's been vacuumed and every mailbox matches the HOA color chart? That was Pinecrest Meadows, just outside Sacramento. White picket fences, kids on bikes, weekend barbecues that smelled like apple pie and good manners. On the surface it was heaven. Underneath, a pressure cooker run by rules so petty they'd make a dictator blush. And right in the middle of it lived my neighbor Ethan Caldwell. 42, divorced dad, software guy who worked from home so he could coach his daughter's soccer team on weekends. Quiet guy, never caused trouble. Just wanted to keep his bills down after the split. So 2 years back he put up one of those small residential wind turbines in his backyard. Nothing huge, sleek, modern, spun nice and quiet on his oversized corner lot. Green energy, right? Saved him a couple $100 a month. Everybody else had solar panels hidden behind hedges because the HOA allowed those if you paid the right fee. But Ethan's turbine? Oh no. That crossed the invisible line. It started small, the way these HOA nightmares always do. First came the polite letters in the mail from the president herself, Victoria Langford. Vicky to her friends, which were basically nobody because she treated everyone like staff. Late 50s, always in pastel cardigans and pearls even in 90-degree heat, clipboard permanently glued to her hand like it was a royal scepter. Dear Mr. Caldwell, the first one read, your structure violates Section 4.2 of the covenants regarding visual harmony. Please remove within 30 days or face daily fines. Ethan just laughed it off at first. He sent a nice reply with photos showing it was barely visible from the street and met the height limit. Vicky's response, a fine. Then another. Then a certified letter threatening legal action. Neighbors started whispering at the community pool. Did you see Ethan's thing? It's an eyesore. Vicky says it drops property values. Classic suburban mob mentality. Ethan stayed calm. He'd smile at block parties, wave at the mailman, keep mowing his lawn at exactly the approved 2.5 inches. But inside, he was watching, taking notes, filing every letter, every fine, every passive-aggressive comment at the annual meeting. Then came the morning that changed everything. Ethan stepped outside with his coffee, same as always, expecting that gentle whoosh from the blades catching the morning breeze. Silence. Dead silence. He walked around back, heart already sinking, and there it was. His turbine lying in a twisted heap of metal and fiberglass like someone had taken a chainsaw to a dream. Blades bent, tower snapped clean in half. Tools marks everywhere. Not storm damage. Deliberate. And right there, staked into his grass like a victory flag, one of those bright laminated HOA notices. Unauthorized structure removed per compliance order 4782. Thank you for your cooperation. Ethan just stood there in his slippers, coffee going cold, staring at the wreckage that used to power his house and his pride. He didn't yell. He didn't call the cops right then. He just knelt down, ran his hand over the cut metal, and felt something cold settle in his chest. This wasn't about a turbine anymore. This was war. And Vicky Langford had just fired the first shot on the wrong man. He went inside, locked the door, and pulled out the old file box his late father had left him. Dad was the original owner of that corner lot before the subdivision ate up the rest of the land 20 years ago. Ethan started flipping through yellowed deeds, easements, county stamps. And there it was, buried in the paperwork nobody ever bothered to read when the HOA was formed, an irrevocable water easement. The fancy, eternal spring fountain that sat in the middle of the community plaza, the one that fed the irrigation for all the common areas, and the Olympic-sized pool everyone bragged about in their real estate ads? That water came straight from an underground aquifer that ran under Ethan's property line. The HOA had been piping it for free all these years because the original developer never bothered to renegotiate the rights. Legally, it was still Ethan's to control. He sat back, a small smile forming for the first time since the turbine died. Vicky thought she owned the neighborhood. Turns out the neighborhood's water belonged to him. The next few days Ethan played the perfect neighbor. He filed the police report for vandalism, took photos, got estimates for replacement. But he never once mentioned the water. He let the fines pile up, let Vicky send her little enforcement crew to measure his grass again like they were the FBI. At the monthly HOA board meeting she stood up in her pearl necklace, voice dripping fake concern. We simply cannot allow one resident to undermine the standards that make Pinecrest Meadows special. Mr. Caldwell's noncompliance is affecting everyone's investment. The room nodded like trained seals. Ethan sat in the back row, arms crossed, not saying a word. But he was recording every syllable on his phone. Later that night, he drove to the county recorder's office, pulled more files, and found the real gold. The easement wasn't just for water. It included a clause that allowed the rights holder to install control valves for maintenance. Maintenance. That was the loophole. Meanwhile, the harassment ramped up. Anonymous notes on his door about noise pollution from a turbine that was already gone. Kids in the neighborhood suddenly steered clear of his yard like he had cooties. Vicky's husband even accidentally backed his golf cart into Ethan's mailbox. Classic. Ethan just fixed it, smiled, and kept collecting evidence. He installed a couple of hidden trail cams around his property line, just in case. Smart guy. Patient. The kind of quiet rage that builds slow and hits like a freight train. One afternoon, Vicky showed up at his door herself, clipboard in hand, fake smile plastered on. Mr. Caldwell, we're willing to waive the remaining fines if you agree to sign this compliance affidavit admitting the structure was in violation. Ethan leaned against the doorframe, coffee in hand, and looked her dead in the eye. You know, Vicky, I've been reading the bylaws. Section 7.3 says no removal of structures without a hearing and 30-day notice. You skipped that part, didn't you? Her smile twitched. That's an administrative oversight. He nodded slowly. Oversight. Cute word for vandalism. She huffed, spun on her heel, and marched off. But Ethan caught the flicker in her eyes. Fear. Just a spark. He went back inside and started sketching diagrams of the main water line that ran from his lot under the street to the fountain. Hank, his buddy from the hardware store who owed him a favor, came over that weekend. They walked the property line at dusk, talking low. You really gonna do this? Hank asked. Ethan just smiled that calm, terrifying smile. Not revenge, Hank. Restoration. She took something of mine. Now she's gonna feel what that's like. By the end of week 2, the whole neighborhood was buzzing. The fountain still sparkled like nothing was wrong, but Ethan knew exactly where to place the new valve. He didn't rush. He waited. Watched Vicky strut around the pool like she owned the water itself. Little did she know that water was about to stop flowing on her command. Here's where things got interesting, folks. Ethan was at the county office again, double-checking the easement language, when the clerk slid an extra folder across the counter. Thought you might want to see this too. Old board minutes. Inside were emails. Vicky had hired the demolition crew off the books, paid them with HOA funds without a full board vote. Clear violation of her own precious bylaws. Ethan's pulse kicked up. But that wasn't the twist. The real bomb came when his neighbor Mrs. Alvarez from 2 doors down knocked on his door that night, looking nervous. She'd installed one of those fancy doorbell cams last year. Caught the whole destruction on video. Vicky directing the crew at 5 a.m., pointing, laughing even. Make sure it's unrecognizable, she'd said on tape. Ethan thanked her quietly, copied the file, and suddenly he had ironclad proof. Not just vandalism. Fraud. That same night, he and Hank installed the valve under cover of darkness. Nothing flashy. Just a smart reroute that sent the aquifer water back into a small retention pond on Ethan's lot instead of feeding the HOA pipes. Legal. Quiet. Devastating. The next morning, the fountain was still running, but the flow was already dropping. By day 3, the community pool's water line started showing that ugly white ring. Residents noticed. Complaints flooded the HOA inbox. Vicky called an emergency board meeting, voice shrill over the speakerphone. There must be a leak somewhere. We need to investigate immediately. Ethan sat in the audience, silent, watching her sweat under the fluorescent lights. Then came the confrontation. Vicky showed up at Ethan's gate at sunset, SUV idling, clipboard shaking in her manicured hands. I know what you're doing, Caldwell. Turn the water back on, or I'll sue you into the next century. Ethan didn't even raise his voice. He just held up his phone, hit play on the doorbell cam footage, and let her watch herself ordering the turbine's destruction. Her face went the color of spoiled milk. That's taken out of context. Ethan smiled. Section 12.1 of the bylaws says any officer who misuses funds or bypasses votes can be removed by majority vote. I've already sent copies to the other board members. Oh, and about the water? That easement is mine. You've been drinking from my well for 20 years. Time to pay the bill. She sputtered, threatened, then drove off spraying gravel like a bad movie villain. But the damage was done. The board saw the evidence. Whispers turned to open talk. By the end of the week, the eternal spring fountain looked more like a sad puddle. The pool was closed for maintenance, but everyone knew. Kids complained they couldn't swim. The landscaping crew was panicking because the sprinklers were barely spitting. Vicky tried everything. She called plumbers, blamed climate change, even tried to pin it on Ethan publicly at the next meeting. "This man is holding the entire community hostage," she screamed, pearls bouncing. Ethan just stood up calmly, projected the easement documents and the video on the big screen, and said, "I'm not holding anyone hostage. I'm enforcing the rules you love so much. You destroyed my property without due process. You misused funds. Now the water follows the law." The room went dead silent. Board members shifted in their seats. One by one, they started asking questions Vicky couldn't answer. The real turning point came when Susan, the only decent board member, stood up. "Victoria, we've reviewed everything. Effective immediately, you're removed as president. We'll cover the cost to rebuild Mr. Caldwell's turbine and drop all fines." Vicky's face cracked. The woman who had spent years terrorizing everyone over lawn height and mailbox color suddenly looked small. She tried one last bluff. "You can't do this to me. I built this community." Ethan leaned forward. "No, Vicky. You just ruled it. Big difference." The meeting ended with her storming out, heels clicking like a countdown to her own defeat. But Ethan wasn't done yet. He waited 2 more days, letting the fountain stay dry, letting the pressure build. Then he sent a single email to the board with one condition: public apology. In front of everyone. At the next town hall. The town hall was packed. Folks who never came to meetings showed up with popcorn-level anticipation. Vicky walked in last. No pearls this time. Just a plain blouse and the look of someone who finally understood consequences. She stepped to the mic, hands trembling, and read from the paper like it was written in her own blood. "I wrongfully authorized the removal of Mr. Caldwell's wind turbine without proper process. I misused HOA resources. I let power go to my head and forgot the rules apply to everyone, including me. I'm sorry." The room didn't clap. It just exhaled. Truth had finally shown up. Ethan nodded once, stood, and said simply, "Water's back on tomorrow. Turbine gets rebuilt next week. Let's all remember why we have these rules." 2 weeks later, the new turbine spun taller and stronger than before. The fountain gurgled happily again, but quieter, like it knew better than to brag. Neighbors waved at Ethan now with real respect, not fear. Vicky kept her distance, took up gardening in her own yard, and actually followed the rules she once weaponized. Funny how a little dry fountain can wash away a lot of arrogance. Ethan sat on his porch that first evening the blades turned again, coffee in hand, listening to the soft whoosh that sounded like justice. He didn't gloat. He just felt the weight lift. The lesson? Never underestimate the quiet guy with the paperwork. In Pinecrest Meadows, the lawn stayed perfect, the rules stayed strict, but one Karen learned that real power doesn't come from clipboards. It comes from knowing exactly where the water flows. And sometimes, the best revenge isn't loud. It's just letting the truth run its course until the bully finally gets thirsty enough to say sorry. If you've ever dealt with an HOA Karen who thought she owned the neighborhood, drop your story below. Like if you love the payoff, subscribe for more, and remember, keep your deeds close and your valves ready. Pinecrest Meadows is peaceful again. But we all know how fast that can change when someone forgets the rules apply to them too.